Hello and welcome to the RotD Deep Dive spoiler-filled discussion video on 2015's Bone Tomahawk. And as I often do in a deep dive discussion, one of the first things I want to talk about is one of the last things in the movie. And, well, there's actually two moments. The guy getting split in half scene was awesome. But then there was a moment at the very end that I also want to discuss. As far as getting split in half scene goes, I thought that was remarkably well done. It looked very real, and it was a scene that could have very easily looked fake. That was some pretty complex body practical effects going on there, and I was very impressed by it. Yeah, it was darn gruesome, and I think were it not for that scene, and okay, I think if it weren't for that scene, and if it weren't for the odd vocal manipulation that the savages were doing, the calling out, I don't know if this would have been a horror, because a lot of bad things happen in Western movies, and they can get pretty darn gruesome. So what makes it a horror? First of all, I think that there's a difference between realistic bloody tragedies and gory gruesomeness. And I think that this did get into that that category with that scene, the split in half scene. And the vocal manipulation bit, I think, added a slightly interesting twist to it. And from what I was reading, the director chose to kind of leave it ambiguous as to whether or not anything supernatural was occurring. And you could kind of see some elements of that, where that has that possibility of maybe not supernatural, but otherworldly. And I think that definitely did wind up, those two things especially, put it into that horror category. The attacks that happened between the savages and the rescue party, I really liked them. There was no broadcasting it to the audience. It was silent. It was quick. It was efficient in its brutality. You know, there was just arrow in the arm, and here they come. And it was the sound effects were pretty good too. They really put in some squelching and crunching in this movie that I really did appreciate. But I really loved the efficiency of the attacks themselves. I thought that worked really well, and also worked on that level of giving the savages that otherworldly feel to them, that they are beyond just a normal, even well-trained human being, and the efficiency of the attacks reflects that. Before I get to the very end bit, there's one other thing I want to talk about first. And that is the concept of protagonists that play a situation throughout a movie intelligently, and how much I love that. No Country for Old Men is a great example of that for me, that Josh Brolin's character there, you know, it was a fairly formulaic, plot on the surface level of it. You know, a guy happens across a bunch of, bloody tainted money, and once he takes it, and then he's being hunted by it. It's something that is certainly seen the silver screen before, but he plays it so intelligently. You know, if he sees the aftermath, and he sees the cars down in the valley, and he basically just, sits there, and he evaluates the situation. And he takes hours of just patiently waiting. Is anybody going to show up? Is anybody down there still alive? Is this being monitored by anybody else? You know, he's patient about it. He's calculated about it. And he plays that throughout the entirety of the movie. So it makes the cat and mouse thing between Josh Brolin and Javier Bardem all the better, because you have this sinister force going up against this intelligent protagonist, and it works. And I really liked how at every step, despite the fact that the rescued woman called them all idiots, I really liked how they played things very intelligently. Whether or not it was intelligent to even go out in the first place is up for debate, but once they decided to, it was very smart about it. And that had a lot to do with the level of detail that was in the movie. Somebody is, laying out the bell, string of bells. If anybody crosses it, just, shoot. And I loved that scene when I guess an animal tripped it, and, Matthew Fox, he's just laying prone, and then boom, put his money where, put his money where his mouth was, and fired his pistol without giving a second thought. And I really, really like that. And then just the little things, the two Mexicans approaching, well, each of you light a match and then approach slowly and don't lose those matches. When it's time to, when the horses get stolen, it's time to go on foot. Okay, well, take only the provisions that are absolutely necessary, bury the rest. It was very, very smart about everything it did. And I really appreciated that. I really think that elevates a horror movie, especially when you have that kind of cat and mouse situation like you often do in horror movies, whether it be again, the protagonist against a supernatural force like, Nancy and Freddy Krueger, anything like that. And so often in horror films, we get the stupid characters. This is even, the commercials and tropes about it, let's run upstairs. Let's split up. We'll cover more ground that way. Let's, why can't we get into the running car? So when you do have intelligent characters that, maybe are just up against forces that are too much for them, no matter how smart they play it, I think that is much more powerful, and it's much more engaging. You're not spending the movie rolling your eyes. You're genuinely wondering, along with these characters, how are you going to get out of this? So I really, really like that. And then lastly, the bit I want to talk about is the very, 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 very end, and that is the rock at the end. Small thing, but I really liked it. And here's why. It really spoke to the character of both the deputy and the sheriff, that the deputy picked up the rock as they were on their way out, leaving the sheriff behind. And some time passes, some walking happens, and the deputy still has the rock. He is being prepared for a fight because he knows that there's at least 3 more of these savages out there. And then they hear the gunshots through the hills. And his belief and his trust and his faith in the sheriff was enough to say, yeah, he got him. Time to throw the rock away. I don't need this anymore. Of course he got him. Why wouldn't he? It's the sheriff. I loved that. I mean, whether he's wrong or not, who knows? But I really loved that level of the way that characters feel about one another that transcends the written word, that that the screenwriter or the director, or this is, I don't know if it's the same on this one. It is. So I think this is one situation where the writer and director being the same person can really, really elevate things, is because the writer will often come up with that kind of level of interaction, that backstory that doesn't make it to the printed page. That, of course, this one character has this level of faith and trust in another, and as soon as he hears the shots, well, then they're good enough. They're dead. And for that to pass from the screenwriter to the director, sometimes there isn't that level of communication. There isn't that foundation for that path of communication to happen. But by having the writer and director as the same person, you can often, bring that aspect that you had in mind when you were writing it to the screen. Unfortunately, sometimes when you have the writer and director as the same person, then a bad idea can happen all the way from the first draft of the screenplay to the time it hits people's eyes in the theater. But that wasn't the case in this case, and I'm really glad of it. So that was pretty much all I really wanted to talk about with Bone Tomahawk. What I would like at this point is to hear from you. If you have anything you would like to add to this, if you disagree with me, if you think that it shouldn't have been rated as highly as it was, I would love to hear from you. In any case, please leave comments down below, and I will be reading them and replying to them and engaging with them. And again, if you like these reviews, if you like these deep dive discussions, I invite you to click the subscribe button. Other than that, I really appreciate you making me a part of your day, and I will see you tomorrow. Thank you.